Have you ever looked back at a major war and just thought to yourself, what on earth were they thinking? We tend to assume that leaders are making these cold, calculated, rational decisions. But what if the fate of entire nations actually hinges on something, well, a lot more human and a lot more unpredictable? Today, we're going to dig into whether AI can finally give us a window into the irrational choices that so often lead to war.
Right, so this is the central puzzle, isn't it? You have these brilliant strategists, you have mountains of intelligence data, and yet history is just this long, long story of catastrophic miscalculations. If leaders are supposed to be rational, why do they so often pick a path that leads straight to disaster?
For decades, the main way academics looked at this was to see nations as logical players on a kind of global chessboard. The core assumption was pretty simple. Countries will always act in their own best interest. They'll weigh the costs and benefits with perfect clarity, just like a grandmaster in a chess game.
But of course, real history tells a much, much messier story. It's a story that's not just about strategy, but about ego, about fear, ideology, and just plain old flawed human psychology. That perfectly rational leader? Turns out they might just be a myth.
Okay, so let's actually pull apart this rationality myth. We have to get a handle on the psychological forces that are really at play before we can see where AI fits into all of this.
And the key idea here is something called cognitive bias. Think of these as little glitches in our brain's operating system. So, for example, leaders can get hit with overconfidence, where they just massively overestimate their odds of a quick and easy victory. Or they can be driven by loss aversion, where the fear of losing something is so powerful it makes them take enormous risks they otherwise wouldn't. And then there's ideological fixation, where you're so blinded by your beliefs that you twist all the incoming information to fit your worldview, no matter how distorted it gets.
And this brings us to a really fascinating, kind of counterintuitive idea. We usually want AI to be perfectly logical, right? To be better than us. But what if we did the exact opposite? What if we could build an AI that actually mimics these human flaws? An AI that could simulate not just the cold, hard logic, but the irrationality of a historical leader.
Well, that is precisely what a team of researchers set out to do. So let's meet the star of our show today, a framework they call ProfileAgent.
Now, ProfileAgent is not your average AI. It uses large language models. The same kind of tech that powers things like ChatGPT, to create what you can basically think of as digital personas. It's built to capture not just what a leader knew, but how they thought, biases, motivations, and all. And the process is really systematic. First, the researchers just dive deep into historical documents. We're talking speeches, diplomatic cables, private memoirs, to build a really detailed psychological profile. Second, they actually code those traits and biases into individual AI agents. Third, they drop these AI personas into a simulation of a real historical crisis. And finally, they sit back and analyze the decisions that the AI makes.
So to really put this powerful new tool to the test, the researchers picked one of the most complex and consequential conflicts of the 20th century, the Korean War. Let's see how they set it up.
They essentially created an AI cast of three main characters.
The Kim Il-sung agent was programmed with his well-documented revolutionary fire and extreme overconfidence. The Stalin agent was modeled to be just as paranoid, cautious, and calculating as historical records show him to be. And the Mao Zedong agent was given this really complex personality, trying to balance its communist ideology with the very real, very pragmatic concerns for the brand new state of China. And the researchers didn't just run one big simulation, no, they were smarter than that. They tested the AI at two absolutely critical turning points. So, in scenario one, you have the AI leaders debating whether to even start the war in the first place. But in scenario two, the tables have turned completely, and they have to urgently figure out if China should jump in to save North Korea from total collapse. And check this out. This quote just shows you how well the AI performed. This is not a real historical quote. This is a line generated by the AI Kim Il-sung agent during that first simulation. You can just hear that programmed overconfidence, that revolutionary zeal coming through loud and clear. It's not just spitting out data, it's projecting a personality.
Okay, so the simulation sounds convincing, but did it actually work? I mean, did the AI just cook up some plausible-sounding fiction, or did it genuinely echo what happened in history? Let's take a look at the results.
This is the big headline number. When the researchers took the AI simulated conversations and compared them to the actual historical records, they found an average semantic similarity of around 60%. Now, what that means is the AI wasn't just taking wild guesses. It was actually capturing the substance, the meaning, and the tone of the real-life discussions to a pretty remarkable degree.
And if you dig into the data from that first pre-war scenario, it totally backs this up. The AI's conversations showed the exact cognitive biases that historians have been describing for years. The Kim agent, highly overconfident. The Stalin agent, very risk-averse, always expressing caution. And the Mao agent was more in the middle, trying to balance all the different factors.
But here is where it gets really incredible. When the war turned against them in that second scenario, the agent's psychology actually shifted, just like a real person's would under pressure. And you can see that shift right here in the data. Kim's overconfidence just plummets, and he starts leaning way harder on his ideology. Mao's overconfidence also drops, and his risk aversion shoots up as the threat of war with the US becomes very, very real. Their programmed personalities were dynamic. They reacted to changing events.
And that right there, that is the real breakthrough. This AI wasn't just programmed to say things that sounded historical. It was able to replicate the underlying psychological journey of the people making the decisions, showing the same cognitive biases and emotional shifts under the same intense pressures.
I mean, this is stunning stuff. And it naturally leads to the big question, what does this all mean for the future? Could this be some new kind of crystal ball for understanding not just history, but maybe even the conflicts happening right now?
The potential is obviously huge. I mean, you can imagine using this for advanced policy simulations or creating these virtual history labs for researchers to play with. You could even use it for better red team crisis training. But, and it's a big but, the researchers are also very clear about the pitfalls. These AI models can hallucinate, they can just make stuff up. There are some really serious ethical questions about creating digital clones of real people, and of course the AI itself can have its own hidden biases that could totally skew the results.
At its core, this really represents a major shift. To use the researchers' own words, this framework gives us a virtual history laboratory. It lets us move beyond just interpreting history to actually creating data-driven simulations of it. It's a whole new way to experiment with the past.
And that leaves us with this final, incredibly powerful question. We started out by asking why rational leaders make irrational decisions. This new technology gives us a brand new tool to understand those decisions. So the ultimate challenge, and really the ultimate hope, is whether that new understanding can help us build a more rational and maybe, just maybe, a more peaceful future.